Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of the places at Hawk Blogger. And we got something a little different today. I am actually on a flight to Washington, D.C. right now to cover the team for the Sunday night football game. But that doesn't mean that we can't give you guys something to watch, listen to, talk about related to Seahawks. It is a Seahawks Saturday after all. So wanted to record this for you before I honestly finish packing and get ready for the trip. So we did get a final injury report from Mike McDonald and the Seahawks, and there's some news of note in there. So I'm going to get through that and the implications of that for who might get some playing time on Sunday, who might not, how big of a deal it is, all those things. If you haven't already taken the chance to give the show a like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. It only takes a second and helps us grow the show and bring more people into the fold. We're up over 26,000 subs here, close to 27, and also getting closer to 10,000 followers on TikTok. Would love to get folks over there as well. If you don't find us there, please do. It'd be great to have you over there. So let's get right to it. The report was a little mixed, I guess I would say. So there was good news, and let's start with the good news. Why not? Let's start with the good news. So the good news is this. The Seahawks will have Derek Hall. They will have Devin Witherspoon, and they will have Robbie Utes. So those are all really good things. Like, it's great to have those guys back. I think they're all impact players. I think they're all guys that can make a difference on the team. And, we'll see how that plays out. I'll kind of talk about where that might show up in terms of snap counts and stuff like that in a little bit. But that's the good news. The less than good news, Jake Bobo is out with an Achilles injury. We have found that Mike McDonald said it is not a rupture. So, we don't know much more than that, but he is out. Eric Saubert, for the first time this season, the tight end, is out. That's a bigger one than people might realize, and I'll talk about that. Christian Haynes, still not back yet. He's still, as I said before, my expectation is they're going to take their time with Christian Haynes. He's a backup. I don't feel like I'm not even sure he would be the first guard in if there was an issue with Anthony Bradford or Gray Zabel. I think there might be guys already on this roster that they might turn to first. So I don't think they're in a rush to get Christian Haynes back. Derek Young, Julian Love, we knew were already going to be out. So they are out as well. Then this is where it gets a little curious. Questionable is the designation for Cooper Kupp and Jarran Reed. But what really, I think, gets my attention on this one is if you look at the injury report, which I'm doing right now, you will see that Cooper Kupp went from full participation on Wednesday to limited participation on Thursday to did not participate on Friday. No bueno. That is a pretty decent sign that it's a long shot for Cooper Kupp to be available. Now, it is interesting that they listed him as questionable and not doubtful. As far as the way that's gone so far for the Seahawks this year, when they have listed somebody as questionable, I believe almost all of those guys have played. 5 out of 7 players that have been listed as questionable have played. So that's over 70%. I am operating under the assumption that he is not going to play. But we'll talk about, let's assume that that's the case, and we're going to talk about the implications, the downstream ripple effect of that in a second. Jarran Reed is also listed as questionable. He went from limited participation on Wednesday to limited participation on Thursday to full participation on Friday. Now, Friday's practices are generally very light. They're basically a walkthrough. So I don't think that guarantees anything, but it's at least trending in the right direction. And I guess I'm expecting Jarran Reed to be a guy that does play in this game. Of course, I thought that Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love would play in the last game, and that didn't happen, or at least Devin Witherspoon would. So who knows? We will see. Otherwise, I think that let me just go through the Commanders injuries real quick, and then we'll circle back to the Seahawks and what's going to happen there. But for the Commanders, they've listed 2 players as out. Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver, we already knew, is out. Colson Yankoff, the tight end, is also out. And I got to see real quick. I don't even know if Yankoff, how often he plays. So I haven't honestly looked this up myself, and I'm curious. I mean, I don't think he's played. Maybe he's a special teams player. That's what I assumed. He's a special teams player for them, for the Commanders. So not a big deal. But they do have a few guys as questionable, and 2 of them are Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle, and Laramie Tunsil, their left tackle. And as far as their practice participation, both were limited participants on Friday. And, we'll just have to see if those guys are going to go in this game. The Commanders have lost a number of games in a row. They're eager to get this win. I would think they're going to get as many of these guys on the field as possible. But the Johnny Newton thing is something to watch. Interestingly, Javon Kinlaw went to full participant. He does not have an injury designation. He is good to go. Matt Gay, their kicker, who had a back injury, is good to go. So, the only real question marks are Laramie Tunsil and Johnny Newton, and those are pretty big question marks that we'll see how that ends up playing out. All right, so let's get back to the Seahawks for a second, and let's talk about the impact of 2 receivers potentially being out of this game. The first of which is Jake Bobo. Actually, 3. Let's talk about 3 receivers. Jake Bobo and Derek Young. Let's talk about them first. So I know there's all these folks like a little bit like the sky's falling with the receiver situation. I'm going to try to untangle that a little bit for you. Jake Bobo's snap count over the course of this year, his highest snap count was 19 snaps in week 3. He played 5 snaps in week 5. He basically played between 10 to 19 snaps throughout this season. In the last game they played against Houston, he played 16 snaps. As far as Jake Bobo's utilization so far this year, when he has played, you're talking about a player who has been targeted twice. He has 2 targets all year, 2 catches, good efficiency, Jake, for 20 yards. So while I do think Jake Bobo is a valuable player, definitely a good blocker, a good special teams player, I just want to keep it realistic about how much he was playing when he was available. So I don't think it's a catastrophic loss. Derek Young, even fewer snaps. His high was in week 3. He played 16 snaps. This is on offense. Other than that, he's gotten 2, 4, 3, 1. Those are his snap counts over the last 4 weeks. So he is not playing a considerable number of snaps on offense. Now, if Jake Bobo was injured, you would expect Derek Young to get more of those snaps. He's not able to. So we'll talk about the downstream effect there. But the impact for Derek Young being out is much more about kick returning. And so we'll talk about that when I get to how I think they'll be replaced in just a moment. All right. So that is Derek Young and Jake Bobo. I don't think it's as big of a deal as maybe folks think in that regard, because the Seahawks play mostly 2 tight end and 2 back. Like those are their primary personnel groupings. In fact, I can look that up real quick. So we have actual numbers to look at here with this. The Seahawks, they play 11 personnel at 36%. 11 personnel is 3 receivers. So they do that 36% of the time. They are in 12, like they're in 2 tight end or 2 back situations or 3 tight end situations. My gosh, this would be, let's do this quickly. 42, 52, like 58. Like, yeah, I mean, honestly, if I add this up, they're probably close to over 60% of the snaps are with 2 tight ends or a fullback and a running back, which means that they only have 2 receivers on the field. So that's why, from a snap count perspective, you're getting JSN and Cooper Kupp getting the bulk of the snaps. Just to give you an idea, over the course of the season, JSN has 326 snaps. Cooper Kupp has 318 snaps. Torrey Horton's next highest at 189. So it's a significant drop off. And then you go to Jake Bobo at 72 and Derek Young at 34. So yeah, it's a it's a 2 receiver offense for the most part, and they do run obviously some 3 receiver stuff. So that's the Jake Bobo Derek Young thing. But the Cooper Kupp aspect of this is something that's a concern and has a bigger impact. So Cooper Kupp, as I said, has played almost as many snaps as JSN. JSN's 326, Cooper Kupp's 318. And he is playing generally 75% or more of the snaps in any given game. He's also arguably your best run blocker as a receiver, and that does matter for a team that's, desperately wants to be able to run the ball. So let's assume that Cooper Kupp is also out. What do the Seahawks do? Well, the first part's probably easier, looking at how you deal with a Jake Bobo and Derek Young absence. I think the answer is probably one player. I'd expect Cody White to be elevated from the practice squad. And let me just double check. I had the Seahawks roster up here somewhere. Where did I put it? Yes. Cody White does reside currently on the practice squad. And Cody White has been up before. He can play for you. He can play receiver for you. He also has the ability to be a special teams player and a kick returner. So I think he can do a combinatorial kind of thing with what Jake Bobo did and also Derek Young. And honestly, that's probably enough to get you by for a game, at least, to cover those 2 spots. Beyond that, let's just double check. I want to make sure there's no other receivers on the roster that I'm missing before I make this case. But right. So other guys on the practice squad, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring up like a Courtney Jackson for the first time. Courtney Jackson is a guy I was super excited about as a punt returner. And he's someone that maybe could also be a kick returner for you. So that's possible. They also could look at Ricky White for the first time. They could look at Tyrone Broden for the first time. So those are the wide receivers that you've got on the practice squad. Cody White to me is a almost sure bet. Ricky White's a very good special teams player. Courtney Jackson is a valuable special teams player. Ricky White's probably more valuable as a receiver than Courtney Jackson is, although Courtney Jackson's kind of an interesting player. He's kind of like a running back at receiver and can do some interesting things. But again, none of these guys are probably going to get many snaps at the receiver spot. They basically be there as, backup. Now, as we talked about with the injury report, the Seahawks are also down a safety. So they also very likely will bring up Jarek Reed. So they'll probably only bring up Cody White, and then they'll also bring up Jarek Reed, who is a great special teams player and can play safety. Now, let me just double check Jarek Reed elevation. So it's possible. So here's some things that could be interesting. This is where the Seahawks can make some interesting decisions today, assuming you're watching this on Saturday, is Jarek Reed he might either be at his limit for roster elevations or close to it. And so there's some IR decisions that they could make. They could decide to put Julian Love on IR. I think we're expecting them to put Derek Young on IR. Maybe Jake Bobo's going to go on IR. I don't know. But for everyone that they put on IR, that opens up a roster spot. One of those roster spots is going to go to Robbie Oots, who's going to be activated off of IR himself. Believe it or not, when you come off IR and they let you practice, that is just a practice window. You're not officially on the roster yet. So they still have to make that move and clear a roster spot. So I'm guessing one of those guys going on IR is going to open the spot for Robbie Oots. But they could put another person on IR and then bring Jarek Reed onto the 53 so they don't have to use a practice squad elevation, or maybe he doesn't have one left. They could also do the same thing with Cody White, to be honest. They've had him on the 53 as well. It just depends. And then they'd also have practice squad elevations available to them. And that would be the way that they could bring up two receivers that are currently on the practice squad onto the roster for Sunday. So that's my best guess, is they're going to put somebody, probably multiple people on IR, more than one. And you will probably see at least Jarek Reed added to the active roster. And then, probably Cody White and maybe Ricky White or Courtney Jackson are my best guess of who would be the other elevated players from the practice squad to give some wide receiver depth in case there's any other injury, right? Because even though they don't use a lot of receivers, you don't want to be stuck with nobody available. So that's kind of how I think the receiver spot will go in terms of filling the spots. But what about distribution? So as it stands right now, the target distribution is 70 targets for JSN, 33 to Cooper Kupp, and then 18 to Torrey Horton. And this is just receiver distributions or targets, right? So, that works out to about 5 targets a game for Cooper Kupp, and what has been just 2.5 targets a game for Torrey Horton. I think this is could be an interesting experience to see Torrey Horton now move up to the number 2 receiver spot. This could be a glimpse of the future. Torrey Horton, I think, has been playing very good football. He's been getting open. When I've been watching the games, he's been running good routes, getting open, and the progressions have generally taken Sam Darnold to JSN. This could be a coming out party for Torrey Horton, who I know, a lot of us have already realized he's a really good player, but this guy already has 4 touchdowns on the season, 3 as a receiver and 1 as a punt returner. So I think there's more in there, and I think that he can handle a heavier load than what he's gotten so far. After that, honestly, I'm pretty comfortable with Cody White being in there and having an opportunity to get targets. I think what they will most likely do is they will go to heavier utilization of a 2 tight end set, and or with Robbie Utes back, heavier utilization of a 2 back set with 1 tight end and 2 receivers, or maybe they'll go to 2 backs, 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, 1 receiver. Like, that's possible as well. I don't think it's as likely. They've done that. Well, they've done that 10% of the time so far this year. That's interesting. But I mean, they've only passed out of that personnel package 10% of the time. So it's a very clear run package when they've used it before, but maybe they'd have some pass things out of that. Okay. So this is going to be a combination of things. One, you're going to get more snaps for Torrey Horton, more targets for Torrey Horton. I think that's all good. You're going to get more 2 tight end personnel usage, less 3 receiver usage, and probably more 2 back with Robbie Utes as the other back utilization. So all those things will kind of mask the loss of Cooper Kupp as well as Jake Bobo. Now, Eric Saubert is another sneaky loss, because Eric Saubert is one of has been a really good player as an inline blocker, and just in general has had a nice year. Has been a kind of sneaky good free agent signing for the Seahawks. He has an 80.1 pass block grade, a 63.5 run block grade. And if you look at all tight ends across the NFL, and we just look at pass blocking for tight ends, and we look at guys that have played a lot, Eric Saubert has the 7th highest graded pass block performance so far this year. So it is a meaningful loss, and he has played a decent number of snaps. So Saubert has been the 3rd most used tight end. The most is AJ Barner, 344 snaps. Barner has even more snaps than JSN, if you can believe it. Elijah Arroyo has the next most, 184, and then Eric Saubert at 146. So all 3 of them were getting pretty meaningful snaps. You kind of had Arroyo and Saubert rotating a little bit in these situations. And what started to happen, and I'm going to kind of trace this because I haven't actually looked at this till now. It's actually been pretty consistent that Arroyo has outsnapped Saubert on the year. I'm trying to see if there's any games where that hasn't been true. Not that I've seen. So that's interesting. I actually haven't paid attention to this closely enough to know, but in that regard, it's not a big change. Like the top 2 tight ends have been Barner and Arroyo. They will continue to be in this game. I think you will see Brady Russell available there, but there's another name just to keep an eye on. And some people have probably forgotten that this guy's even on the roster, but he is. Nick Callerup is a rookie, number 89, just like Doug Baldwin, except this guy is 6'5", 266 pounds. Honestly, he is the most like Eric Saubert on this roster. In fact, I thought there was a chance that if Nick Callerup had a really good training camp, he might push Saubert off the roster, but that certainly didn't happen. But what did happen is he made the 53 and he's stuck on it, which is fascinating. This guy is a fantastic run blocker, especially. I would be pretty excited if he was actually active for this game and got a chance to take over that role. I think he's more equipped to do it than Brady Russell. Again, 6'5", 266 pounds. He was one of the best blockers in college football last year. Now, as much as Brady Russell's like one of my favorite players on this team, just in terms of who he is, if you look at his size, I'm trying to find Brady Russell here. I don't know why he's not coming up. Brady Russell is 6'3", 250 pounds. He's just a different size guy. Now, the fight in the dog is much, much larger. And so, he's got a lot of experience. They know him. They'd probably be fine with having him out there. But don't be surprised if Nick Callerup is part of the plan. He also probably can play some special teams for them. And this would be a chance for him to get his feet wet. So that's another piece to this that's kind of worth watching to see what happens there. All right. Quick chance to take a break here and just let you know, if you haven't already used the code HawkBlogger15 at SimplySeattle.com. What are you waiting for? Now is the time. Get you 15% off. Get the best Seahawks gear you will find anywhere at SimplySeattle.com. Make sure you take advantage of that. Also, make sure you download the Sleeper app. It's fantastic. Great way to keep track of your fantasy sports. Real-time updates on what's going on. You can hang out with friends. There's like a squad chat on there. And for a limited time, you can get $20 without making a deposit, which is really cool. And if you use promo code HAWKS, you'll also get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. And I don't want to forget jkboots.com/hawkblogger. You got to put in that URL, jkboots.com/hawkblogger, to get the special deal we've got for you on a great pair of boots. It is going to be pouring rain in the Northwest for like ever now. And like I look at the forecast, it's like forever. We're just going to be in wet weather, like flood warnings, all that stuff. So you need boots. You need great boots. And JK Boots makes the best boots. So jkboots.com/hawkblogger. Buy a pair for yourself. Buy a pair for your family members. They will thank you, and you will love your JK Boots. I promise you that. All right. So now I look at this and I say, like, what are the implications for this particular game? I don't know that. I mean, I thought this was a game that Cooper Kupp would have a chance to stand out because I just don't think the coverage is very good in general on this team, and their linebackers are especially poor in coverage. So I thought as just a secondary option in the middle of the field, Cooper Kupp would be a really good option for Sam Darnold. That's a bummer. I'm hoping he ends up playing, but more importantly, I hope that he is healthy after this. We know Cooper Kupp's dealt with some injuries in the past. We don't want this to continue. But Torrey Horton, I'm not sad about that. I'm just not. Like, Torrey Horton getting more snaps is not a bad thing. Torrey Horton's ready for more opportunity. Torrey Horton can do things with the football that honestly Cooper Kupp's just not going to be capable of doing. They're different players with different strengths. And I love the chance to get a look at that pairing. So I don't hate that. I think Cody White is a fine third. I just don't think he'll get as many snaps, but I have no problems with Cody White being in there. And then the other aspect of this is expect the tight ends to be a big part of the game plan. I already thought that was going to be the case. I think you're going to see the Seahawks a lot in 12 personnel, a lot in 21, and I think you're going to see a lot of wide runs outside the tackles where the Commanders have not been good. They've got slower linebackers, older linebackers. Sorry, Bobby, it's just true. And they're going to have to anticipate that type of stretch play and be able to cover bootlegs that go the opposite direction. I think that is a perfect recipe for the tight ends to have a big game, Elijah Arroyo in particular. So let's see. And I also think there's a chance this could mean Robbie Oots becomes more of a target in the pass game, not just a lead blocker. So I think the Seahawks have a lot of flexibility in this regard to kind of cover up some of these losses, but it's not great. It's not great. You know, it would obviously be better to have as many of your guys as possible. I don't think these losses or these absences are as big of an impact as the Julian Love absence. That's a pretty big one. And, you know, it doesn't matter what game you're in. He's just a fantastic safety and a fantastic glue piece for this whole defense. So him being out for who knows how long is a big bummer. But, you know, these other absences I don't think are as impactful. As far as the Commanders go, you know, Laramie Tunsil, honestly, that's the biggest one. Now, if Johnny Newton is also out, if we look at snap counts for those guys, that's where it starts to get really interesting, because even though Javon Kinlaw is going to play, he is also injured and he's probably gutting it out a little bit. Their snap counts, Daron Payne, who's available and very good, has 344 snaps on the year. Kinlaw has 327. So they've been the two most commonly used defensive tackles. But then it goes to Johnny Newton and then to Eddie Goldman. So if Johnny Newton can't go, you're going to see more of Eddie Goldman. And Eddie Goldman he's just not the same kind of player as Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton's a disruptive interior player. And this is a guy that a lot of people, you know, were kind of pushing they thought he was better than Byron Murphy, which, you know, you guys that listen know I don't feel that way. But he's got 13 pressures on the year, a couple sacks. Eddie Goldman has 5 pressures on the year, no sacks. He's just not a pass rusher. Beyond him, you get to Jalen Holmes. And Jalen Holmes, as I look through this, Jalen Holmes, he has 5 pressures on the year, no sacks. So he's the same as Johnny Newton in that regard, Eddie Goldman in that regard. And he's graded a little bit worse as a pass rusher. Goldman also just not good at defending the run. It would be an issue if they don't have him. And if Javon Kinlaw re-injures himself and he goes out, then it becomes a real issue for that Washington Commanders defense. So something to keep an eye on. I already think the Seahawks have enough advantage, even if all those guys were available and all those guys play. Seahawks should have plenty of advantages to move the ball, but it's something to monitor. The Laramie Tunsil thing, I feel like that's a game over thing if he can't play. I just don't see how that Washington Lions can be able to protect well enough, even with Jaden Daniels confirmed to be playing in this game. So that's just something that I'm guessing he's going to play. If he's this close, if there's a question, I think they'll get him in there because they need him. But if he re-injures the hamstring or he has to come off the field, that would just be huge for that Commanders team. So just something to monitor. But generally speaking, this isn't the worst possible news for the Seahawks. Certainly not great news. And you'd hope coming out of the bye that you'd kind of be healthier. In some ways, it feels like the Seahawks have taken a step back. But getting Devin Witherspoon back, getting Derek Hall back, getting Robbie Oots back, can't forget that. Those are meaningful additions to this team, and I think big lifts for their respective position groups. So that's kind of where I see it. Beyond that, I will keep an eye out, even while I'm flying, on practice squad elevations and all that kind of stuff. And if anything breaks, I will at least tweet about it. If you haven't had a chance to go to hawkblogger.com, I wrote an article. It took me a few days out of this week at least to put it together, that really goes over the kind of growth from Mike Macdonald in year 1 to year 2, and the decisions that he made that I think a lot of people have not paid attention to. Decisions he made in January and February, March and April that set this team on a course to actually have the identity that is started to develop. The Seahawks are the same team each week. We know who they are on offense. We know what they're kind of going to try to do. We know what they do well. We know how the players are going to be utilized. Don't take that for granted. That doesn't happen by accident. That didn't happen last year. We know who they are on defense. We know what they're going to try to do. We know who they're going to leverage to make big plays and how they're going to try to play defense in terms of rushing the passer, in terms of keeping extra guys in coverage, in terms of playing with a light box in general. Doing that and defending the run was not something they could do last year. They're doing it this year better than any team in football. They also have found a way to build a connection across this team that players on that roster really appreciate and recognize as special and different. So I wrote this article that kind of catalogs that it tells the story of where, like, how that all started and where it's gone, where it could go. And I hope you guys like it. I spent a fair amount of time on it. It is a long article. I tend to write long articles, but I think you guys will like it. So check it out over at hawkblogger.com. Let me know what you think. I don't put those on Substack. I haven't done a Substack yet, so it's all free. I think I'm going to keep it that way for the time being, because I just don't write quite as much as I used to, given all the video content that I do and audio content. But I do miss writing. I love writing. It just takes a while. So I don't always have time for it. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. If you do, share it with somebody. That would be something that would help me out. And hopefully they'd enjoy it too. All right, everybody, I'm going to let you go there. Hopefully this was a good use of your time, your Saturday morning. I hope you guys enjoy it. I will be back with you for post game for the Commanders Seahawks Sunday Night Football game. I'm going to be golfing, if you can believe it, at what will be 4:30 in the morning Pacific Standard Time on Sunday. And then I'm going to probably try to take a nap before the football game, and then watch it and do post game after. So all that's ahead. Make sure you click like, make sure you subscribe, and would always appreciate a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those places. All right, till next time, folks, have a great rest of your Saturday.